Nintendo just announced a new addition to Nintendo Switch Online. So today I'm going to be sharing what I believe are the best games on Nintendo Switch Online. So today I'm going to be sharing what I think are the best games on the service. I'll be selecting one game from each of the Nintendo Classics catalogs, starting with the NES and ending with the Nintendo Gamecube. Make sure to stick around to the end of this video to hear which console I actually think has the strongest catalog, and it might not be the one that you think. Before I get started, if you like this video, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel so that you can see more videos just like this one. Let's get started. Kicking things off is the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. And the game that I chose was Super Mario Bros. 3. This one was actually kind of a difficult decision. I think Super Mario Bros. 3 is so special because I feel like this is them really pushing the NES to the limit. If you compare this to some of the early NES games, like even like Mario 1, Super Mario Bros. 3 really shows how much they had mastered working with that specific technology. Everything from the way the game controls, to the way it looks, to the music. Everything about Super Mario Bros. 3 is absolutely perfect. And I think that you can make the argument that the platforming never gets better than Super Mario Bros. 3. Up next is the Super Nintendo, or SNES, which stands for Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This one was also kind of tough, but the game that I ended up going with is Super Metroid. I feel like there were some other really good options in the Super Nintendo catalog that I could have gone with, but the reason that I ended up choosing Super Metroid is because I think that this game was really such a huge step forward for the Metroid series. When you look at the games that came before it in just Metroid and then Metroid 2 Return of Samus, they were very difficult to navigate. And it seems like every single part of Metroid was refined in Super Metroid, and then they ended up remaking both of those games to be more in line of quality with Super Metroid. To me, Super Metroid was them really like perfecting Metroid, and then everything else since then, every other Metroid thing since then has really been them trying to like recreate that same thing. So that's why I chose Super Metroid. Up next is the Game Boy, and the Game Boy collection, it actually includes Game Boy and Game Boy Color all under one app. But the one that I decided to go with is Tetris. And the reason that I chose Tetris was mostly because of its huge cultural impact and its wide range that I feel like pretty much anybody can sit down and see Tetris and kind of understand it. And Tetris as a whole is very simple, but also very complex as well. Not to mention that the music from Tetris is iconic. It also seems suitable because Tetris was a pack-in game for most Game Boys. So there's a pretty good chance that if you had a Game Boy, you were playing Tetris on it anyway. So it seemed like a good one to highlight here. Up next is the Game Boy Advance. This one came down to two different options for me, and I ended up going with Metroid Zero Mission. I almost didn't choose Zero Mission because Zero Mission really is just a remake of Metroid 1, but they did such a good job with it and made it control so well, and they really just went above and beyond with this Metroid 1 remake. There is a section at the end of Zero Mission that I'm not a huge fan of, but as a whole, I think that Zero Mission has a shot at being the best 2D Metroid game. Up next is the Nintendo 64, and this should come as no surprise to you. The game that I chose was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I'm a little surprised that I made it this far in the video without choosing a Zelda game. I think I could have chosen a Zelda game for every single console that I've talked about so far. But Ocarina of Time is very special to me. It's the reason that I love video games. and it still plays really, really well. I don't think that the controls translated super well to the Switch, but I'm not going to hold that against the game. And I'm sure that if you play it with the Nintendo Switch Online N64 controller, you can have as much fun as I did playing it as a kid. Finally, that brings us to the GameCube, and this was another really easy decision, partially because there aren't a ton of games in the GameCube catalog. I think there's like 7 of them now. The choice for me was The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. And one thing that I really like about Wind Waker is this feeling in the game that once you get the boat and can kind of sail around and stuff, you have this feeling that you can kind of go anywhere and do whatever you want. And I love that there are so many little islands and little secrets to uncover and explore. And that's why I ended up choosing Wind Waker. And also, if we're being honest, the rest of the GameCube catalog's not very good. And so that's all of the consoles, which means now that it's time to tell you which console I think has the best catalog. And for me, the best catalog is pretty clearly the SNES. It's got Super Mario World, A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, and probably even more that I haven't played. It does a really great job of highlighting the strengths of the console and showing what it's capable of, and then also kind of showing off where a lot of these series got started. And that's why I think it's the best. Guys, that is all that I have for today. In the comment section, please tell me your favorite games that are featured on Nintendo Switch Online. Until next time, the best way to keep up with me is right here on YouTube and on Instagram at James_Solar. Thanks, guys.